Best ever listeners, how you doing? Welcome to the best real estate investing advice ever show. I'm Joe Fairless. This is the world's longest running daily real estate investing podcast where we only talk about the best advice ever. We don't get into any of that fluffy stuff. What's this today? Cory Boatright. How you doing, Cory?
What's going on, Joe?
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation and a little bit about Cory. He's a real estate investor, coach, and he's been a real estate investing coach and investor. That's what I was supposed to say. He's completed over 1,000 real estate transactions, owns and manages over 420 apartment units. He's on the GP side on those properties and sold over $100 million in real estate transactions. Wowzers. Also based in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So with that being said, Cory, you want to give the best ever listeners a little bit more about your background and your current focus?
Sure. So thanks again for having me on here. Real estate investor. I've been doing it for just close to 15 years now. I bought my first house when I was 21 years old. And so that's 21 years ago. I'm 42, getting ready to be 43 in June, Joe. And I just kind of went up the ranks. I did everything from a bird dog all the way up to had a short sale business in 2006 and loss mitigation company. And then just basically moved to wholesaling after a bunch of big things happened in my life that were pretty hard things to deal with personally. And but also everything that you go through teaches you a lesson. So I got involved with more wholesaling over the last, I'd say 5 to 6 years. And about half that time, I started to have more interest with apartments. And you and I just saw each other in Colorado at your event, which was awesome. It was absolutely incredible event, man. And I read your incredible book that it's just, I mean, it's a huge book. Put it right here on my desk. Everyone has seen it.
Oh yeah, there it is.
It's such a big book, man.
There's a lot of stuff to say about apartment syndication.
It's a lot. And listen to all your podcasts and everything. So you have been tremendously helpful in that regard. Another one of my partners, Cory Peterson, with the Big Kahuna, he's been really helpful as well. And Michael Blanc, Sean Terry is one of my partners now working on apartment side. So what I'm focused on is finding 75 to 120 or to 150 unit apartment complexes, primarily in the greater OKC area. And that's been my real big focus right now, working on finding them off market. And the reason why, Joe, is because I believe there's a big gap where what's called a direct response marketing. If you're familiar, obviously, with Dan Kennedy and John Carlton, a lot of the greats from marketing, there is a gap right now that's needed, I believe, in multifamily. No one is really doing a great job of doing direct response marketing for multifamily and for the owners. And so in 2019, one of my big emphasis projects, I call them emphasis projects, is really finding some piece of direct mail, marketing piece, some medium that really gets in touch with the owners of these 75 unit to 150 unit via direct response, with not having to, not that there's anything wrong, but not having to work with or go through a broker if not needed. So that's been a big emphasis. And then of course, my wholesaling business, we did over 113 deals last year. I have a great operation, how that's set up. And that runs maybe about 15 hours of my time a week to keep that thing churning. So it gives me an extra time to do the other things like marketing for multifamily.
Well, let's dive in. I'd love to talk about the direct response marketing to multifamily operators and why you see an opportunity there. But first, the 15 hours a week that you invest in your wholesaling business, what are you doing exactly?
Yeah. So I have this exercise called and I do this with consulting students as well. I have this exercise called the $10,000 an hour activity. And basically it is take a week of your life and write down from when you get up to when you go to bed at night, everything that you did in an hour. Every hour you put it up on your phone that reminds you, what'd you do this last hour? What'd you do this last hour? And at the end of this week, basically you have to grade, was that thing that you did, now we're talking about business activities, not family, you can't put a price on that, but business activities, was that thing that you did worth $10 an hour activity, $100 an hour activity, $1,000 an hour activity, or $10,000 an hour activity? And obviously there's very few things in the $10,000 hour activity, and it's more of a concept. But what I found, and it's easy for all entrepreneurs to do this, myself included, is that we tend to do things just so we can get them done, so they're not lingering around, not hanging out there and causing us to get off focus. But those are $10 to $100 hour activities, Joe. And the goal is to figure out where we can spend more of our time on the $1,000 to $10,000 activities. And so those things, as you asked, are the big leverage points, the big rocks. We do a level 10 in our business. And so if you're familiar with Traction, great book. You probably heard a lot from. It's a great way to basically run a company, and you can go through and you can find out these big rocks of what are the things that need to happen to move the needle forward. And those tend to be not the things that are the $10 to $100 hour activities. Those are the $1,000 to $10,000 hour activities. An example would be, maybe you need to call someone, Joe, and have a conversation with them, because it needs to be a direct conversation with you and them to connect and build that relationship with them. And then maybe from there, you want to talk to them about some opportunity that you have that's coming up or in your business that can really move the needle forward, in your business. And that would be a $10,000 an hour activity. Some of these other smaller activities are things that typically just a virtual assistant can handle. I'm still amazed, and you mentioned this before we got on this on our interview today, that you have a lot of Tim Ferriss books around. Well, he wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, which was pretty instrumental in changing the perspective for me. I bet for you too, on how you view business and how you can leverage things. Well, that's where the focus is right now, is where can I put those big rocks, and where can I look at those $10,000 to $10,000 activities that can move the needle forward.
Today is Thursday, so we're well into the week. What are some specific things that you've done in your wholesaling business this week? Great
question. So this week, I contacted a guy named Greg Helbick and Jason McDougall, and I found an opportunity for marketing, because I love it. I absolutely love marketing. But it's in Dallas. And so I'm here in Oklahoma City. I'm not going to do anything in Dallas. I know that they have a great operation in Dallas. I simply told them about this opportunity, spent maybe 10 minutes with them, and said, hey, is there an opportunity that, first off, is this a good opportunity, a house that you can do something with? They said, absolutely. I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Here's all the information on it. If you think we can do something, let's partner on it. Let's partner on it. You let me know, right? So that was one thing I did. They came back to me. Not only are they going to be able to partner on it, that deal in itself, we picked it up for around 143. We're probably going to sell it between 165 and 170. So just for that 5 to 10 minutes of spending that time, sharing a little bit of information with them, being very clear on the expectations. I'm not going to do anything. This is a great opportunity for you. If you want to, this is your area, this is your market. And that deal is going to clear 7, 10, so 27,000. So my part of that deal will be over 10 grand. And I spent maybe 10 minutes on that. So that's an example.
That's a $60,000 an hour thing that you just did. Even better.
That's a 60,000. That's right. I'm working on the 10x, but it's difficult to get there, right? But
yeah.
You gotta shoot for that. That really is an example. Whenever you're creating those leverage points,
okay,
and you find those things that you're not going to necessarily spend your time on, but you know someone else that's really going to be good at it, then it's good to build on those relationships.
So let's talk about your comment when you said direct response marketing, and there's a gap that is there for multifamily property, specifically having something that compels owners of 75 to 150 unit properties to follow up with you. What do you know that others aren't doing?
I love to be able to give you a lot of data because I love data myself, but I'm really in the process of right now of building the data up. But I can tell you some things I have figured out so far.
Okay.
One is I've done mailers on finding deals on apartment complexes. And what I found in the greater OKC area on just in a source called ListSource, a lot of your listeners are probably familiar with it or not, you can go to listsource.com and you can pull data. You can look at apartments that are 10 units and above. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting that I found after doing a small mailer was some people that contacted didn't even know what their NOI was. Mm-hmm. Didn't know what a P&L sheet was, Joe. Couldn't tell you how many exact units are. Couldn't tell you what the vacancy rate was. Couldn't tell you how much work's needed. This really blew my mind because there is this assumption and there's this perception that because someone owns a $5 million, $10 million asset, mm-hmm. that they're smarter than you or whatever it is, that they're more, that they know more about that unit, that they're going to be less motivated to work with you because they have options. And it is, they do have options, but as understanding the pain points from motivated sellers in the wholesaling business, which is what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, it is a different animal on multifamily because it takes longer time, but the pain points are really interesting. On multifamily, it is my partners and I have a legal dispute.
Yep.
I'm going through a divorce right now. I'm embarrassed because I don't know how to run I don't know how to run this thing. I don't want anybody out there telling me like, oh, your 150 unit now is being bought up because you don't know how to do it. There's embarrassment. There's shame involved. Mm-hmm. They've got properties inherited in their kids and the kids are on drugs or they're doing stuff they shouldn't be. And they're running the asset into the ground. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to count. They don't have any idea on their accounting. Or maybe some of the things are, they just need to do a 1031. There's a lot of other reasons, but some of the ones that weren't so obvious that was very learning for me was these people are still motivated too. So no one is hitting someone right between the eyes, which is what great marketing does, and speaks to one person. I'm not talking about speaking to this, economy of multifamily owners that, all assuming just because they have 100 units or whatever that they're happy and everything's great and they're bigger than everyone else. I'm talking about a message that speaks to your pain, because mm-hmm. once you speak to that person's pain, then you'll get a response. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I'm talking about, is finding that marketing piece that says, hey, if you have a challenge right now and you need to sell the property quickly, but you don't know what it's worth, you really don't know if you've been fixing the property up the way it should be. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm local. I'm here in Oklahoma City. I've lived here for years and years and years. Let's go have coffee. This is a completely confidential conversation. By the way, anything that has private, confidential, your email address, your personal phone number saying this is real, stuff like that, it stands out from all of the noise that they get all the time that says, I want you to call me this because if you're interested in your multifamily.
It is. It absolutely does. When you say speak to one person and get their, find that pain point, how do you create something that speaks to one person when, as you mentioned earlier, there are varying pain points on the spectrum? Like if I'm going through a divorce, my pain point is going to be different from if I have inherited a property and I don't know what I'm doing.
Sure. So one thing that I know that hasn't worked is a postcard. So if you're approaching this marketing for multifamily and you're using a postcard, do stop doing it, because the postcard is so it's really designed for single family, and there's a reason why, but I don't want to get into it necessarily right now. I'll tell you that a letter is going to be more effective, and not only a letter, but a FedEx package that you can get a signature. Because how many FedEx packages do you send and you don't open?
Right.
I mean, you're going to open it.
You open it. You always open it.
Or if you have a window, a envelope with a window that shows their name, and at the top of it, open immediately, or urgent, something that shows urgency. And anything that, and we can get into particulars of split testing, but the answer to your question is you are going to have to split test it. And I'd love to right now to show you all the data, but I'm still working on this myself. So maybe at the end of the year, we could have another one. That'd be awesome to follow up. But you're going to have to split test. Means you're going to have to, and the cool thing about multifamily when you do these lists, Joe, is that they're not that big. I send out between 50 and 60,000 mail pieces for single family motivated homeowners every single month. I've done it for years, right? I don't have to do even 10% of that. You don't even have 10, because there's not 10% of 75 to 150 apartment complexes in the greater OKC area. It doesn't exist. So because you have a smaller list, now you have to change your mindset. And this is hard. This is hard for marketers, because we think, what's the best ROI for our marketing piece? You have to change that. You have to think about, what is the best way that I can get in touch with this homeowner, right? That if I did get a deal, the apartment owner, if I did get a deal, they're not, and it's a direct to the owner, I'm not having to worry about a broker. So what's that saving on a $3 to $5 million deal? You know, I mean, that's saving at least $100,000 or more, right? So if I didn't have to do that, right, what could I spend on the marketing piece? Well, for me, I'm spending between 31 and 34 cents on a little postcard with a API that goes to Google for a Google image, says, is this your house? And that one's really effective. But on this, for a letter, you're going to spend 50, 60, 70 cents just on the regular marketing to a single family. You have to stop thinking about that, because your list is only 5, 6, 1,000 people, Joe. Now you can spend $15, $20. I mean, if you wanted to, you could probably spend $30 or $40, depending on where you are and what your marketing is, that to get in touch with this person. And that's the way that you have to think about it. And it's really hard, because usually you want to go the cheapest route, but on multifamily, you're going to have to spend a little bit more money, but it's going to be worth it if you find even one really solid deal.
It is. That's the beauty of the larger deals. It's worth it when you just get one, and it's not only the transactional profits you get from that deal, but it's what it sets you up for future deals because you did that first deal.
Right.
I love that thought process. And I was going to ask you per piece approximately how much it would be for FedEx, but you just answered the question, which really is, that's the wrong question to ask, Joe. It's really about what's the opportunity cost here if you don't do it. Because if you have someone, if you're working with a broker, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are working with a broker, you're going to pay commission. Whereas if you don't, then on a large property, you're going to be saving at least, the seller saves the $100,000, but then you can build that into your offer, and then you can save some money because you're saving them on the broker fees. That's great. And so you're gathering. Well, okay. So one challenge one challenge that a listener will come across when they implement this is single family, heck of a lot easier to track down the owners and their address. Multifamily, you get an entity that owns the property more often than not. Then you look up the entity address and it gets used to some wacky address. So how do you make sure you have the best addresses to contact the owners?
Great question. So The easy answer, but many may not have this access, but you could get it depending on how much your persistence is commercial brokers have a service that we've all heard called CoStar. I know many of your audience has. CoStar has all of the addresses, all of the phone numbers of these owners. And that's going to be one of your easiest routes to go if you can work with a broker and they're willing to basically pull that data out and give it to you. Now, of course, if you're doing that, the broker's probably going to say, well, if you find a deal, then I want you to work with me. So there's that side of it too. But if you wanted to go the route and pay for your own CoStar, I believe it's $25,000 to $30,000 a year. So that's going to be something you have to evaluate there. The other one is skip tracing. And skip tracing is easier with a single family because you don't have to typically worry about companies. A lot of these owners have companies and LLCs and trusts and everything else that these properties are associated in and set up in. So you can have skip tracing, and skip tracing can help you tremendously. And there are some back and forth on whether or not you can get a company skip traced versus just an individual skip trace. And the answer is you can, but it may cost a little bit more money because it's a little bit more involved. They have to go usually to Secretary of State. They have to go and see who is a registered agent and those things. And some of these, you can't see the registered agent. They're filed in places where they're hidden. So that would be something that you need to look into is skip tracing and certainly CoStar.
And what are some skip tracing resources that you recommend listeners check out?
Sure. So American Skip Tracers is a guy that everyone can go check out. I believe Tom Kroll, I'll give him credit for introducing me to him. He didn't even know it, but he posted about him. Tom Kroll's a great wholesale.
Yep. Had him on the podcast. Really good interview.
Guy. Lots of great energy. Tom's in our mastermind group, Collective Genius. So American Skip Tracers, I think it's called America Tracers or America Skip Tracers is one. There is another one that is called IDI, which is it's going to take you a little harder time to get that one set up, but that one is very, very good for pulling great information, and you actually get set up on your own FTP file transfer protocol for you techies. And then Delve Point's another one that's going to be a little harder for you to get set up. But Delve Point has fantastic data as well that you can look into.
Wonderful information. Taking a step back, what's your best real estate investing advice ever?
So 2, be persistent. And when everybody else quits, keep going. That's on single family. So I'm going to divide it. On multifamily, slow down. The person that takes longer time and thinks through things and isn't in a hurry, they're going to win in the multifamily game, especially when it comes down to you actually closing. The last week of your closing process means everything. With delays or anything else, that last week is what it's all going to come down to. So taking time and being patient on the multifamily, it isn't like hot potato on like me in a wholesaling business where I get a property and I do wholesaling, Joe. So we call it real estate, but really it's like the pawn shop of real estate.
Yeah.
It's like I get these properties at 25, 30, 50 cents on the dollar, 40 to 60 cents on the dollar, usually in the greater OKC area, right? It means $100,000 property, I buy it between the lowest 25%, 25,000, or the highest 60,000, right? And I turn around and I sell it for a profit, but I'm really selling the contract. Mm-hmm. Someone says they're signing signing a piece of paper for 50. I know someone that's going to buy it. Joe's going to buy it for 70. I give that over to Joe. He pays me $20,000. That's really wholesaling, right? Yep. In multifamily, it is completely different. It is so completely different. It is all about due diligence. It is all about, did you tell me everything that that you should have with this whole process of going through the annotation?
Which they didn't.
They did. They never do, right? And the person that's more excited to close is typically going to be the person that loses.
Yeah. Yep. Good advice. We're going to do a lightning round. You ready for the best ever lightning round?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. First, quick word from our best ever partners. Okay, best ever book you've recently read.
The best book recently?
Yeah, recently.
Recently. I read a book a week, so I usually listen to a book a week on Audible. Modern Day Jonah, which is Nathan Taylor actually sent it to me. I've been in the process of reading it right now.
What's a mistake you've made on a transaction?
Assuming my expectation was the same as the owner's expectation.
Best ever deal you've done?
Best ever deal. Had to be a short sale deal. I stumbled into it way back in the early 2008-9, and it changed my life, changed the trajectory of my life when I realized that banks were willing to accept less than what's owed on underlying debt. Changed my life.
And best ever way you like to give back to the community? Gratitude.
I remind people every day that you take so many little things for granted. I started a thing called the Grateful Project through my, and we don't get into it, but I went through a personal episode of cancer, thyroid cancer at the end of 2012. It radically changed my life. And to this day, I post a reason to be grateful every single day. I wear this bracelet, Grateful Project. This means everything to me. And I think that if you thought of gratitude as a currency, then you should really think about wanting to become a billionaire, because gratitude means everything, and it is the number one thing that will get you through life on the highs and lows.
Mm-hmm. Colleen, my wife, and I say what we're grateful for before every meal, and one of Tony Robbins' quotes that rings in my mind whenever you talk about this is trade your expectations for appreciation.
I love that, man. I say in the shower every day, my worst day is someone else's paradise.
True.
My worst day is someone else's paradise. I say it over and over again. And man, you get hit with different things in the day and you're like, oh, but then you're going, well, it isn't that bad. So it's a good way to think about it.
How can the best ever listeners learn more about what you're doing and get in touch with you or your organization?
I love that. So just Google my name, Cory, Cory, Boatright, Boatright, which is really funny. If you Google my name, it actually says people that Google you also Google Joe Fairless. It's really
funny. Good. I'm glad to be associated with you.
Get a company. So, and then I was telling you, Joe, we set up because I get, I'm on Facebook a lot. I like social media, and I've done that for a long time. So I set up a website called apartmentevaluator.com. And the only reason I did this is because people are just sending me direct messages on Instagram and on Facebook and on, our emails. They're like, hey, I got this apartment deal. And they might give me 4 pieces of information. And this apartment evaluator is just a very simple, ask a couple of questions, but it really streamlines things and helps the organization.
Amazing. Yep. I see it in here. Looks straightforward and looks like a good resource. Well, thank you so much, Cory, for being on the show and talking about your journey, talking about specifically marketing and where you see, your blue ocean strategy and focusing on direct response marketing towards apartment owners and how you're going to specifically go about that process. And you're already a general partner on 420 deals or 420 units, which we didn't even talk about, but I'm glad that we talked about what we did because this is very action oriented for the best ever listeners. And it's good because you're coming from a wholesaling background on residential where the marketing piece, you've got that down pat, and now someone like you with your background and experience can turn it on and transition into the multifamily space. So I am looking forward to a follow-up conversation a year from now. Let's talk and see the results of what you're going to be doing after you get all the research in and you do a split test and stuff. So thanks for being on the show. Hope you have a best ever day. Enjoyed our conversation. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button below and you will get access to the rest of Joe's videos on real estate investing and apartment syndication.